My name is Lee Weems. I operate a company called First Person Safety, firstpersonsafety.com, and I teach primarily pistol shooting. I teach shotguns and lever gun in a social context, and I like to teach classes that involve training on the dynamics of a deadly force situation. I think there's a great misunderstanding of the dynamics of a deadly force incident, and that's permeated by media. It's permeated by gun store conversations, Facebook, social media, etc. When Shelley asked me to participate in the event today, I pulled out portions of my class that I wanted to focus particularly on the things that I thought were imperative for the attendees to know. Statistically, an adult in the United States stands a 1 in 30 chance of being the victim of a violent crime. And the probability of that probably increases a little bit demographically when you look particularly at females, because then you have to factor in the domestic violence aspect of crime and the sexual violence aspect of crime. And so you are looking at an increased likelihood, and it is more prevalent than what I think the general public tends to know. And it's very important that I think people understand the legal dynamics of using deadly force, as well as the aftermath and everything that's going to come along with that, so that they can go ahead and make decisions ahead of time. How to prepare. Anything that removes doubt is actually going to help decision making. And I think it's very important that people understand all of the dynamics that go in to the decision of whether or not to use force. And then also, ways to avoid having to use deadly force. And I think that's a big factor that would be prevalent for such a group and just for anyone in general. Well, obviously, it's a great crowd, a great group of people. Brian and Shelley do a great job of bringing people together. I think it's very important for people to understand that there are other people out there that are facing the same questions they are facing. And, there are other people who have been through some of the things some of these ladies have already been through. And, come be around like-minded people and learn that there's nothing wrong with defending yourself. Tom Givens has had 63 students that we know of that have been involved in deadly force encounters and that came out on top. And, what's the greatest factor in his success rate? Someone pointed out one time that he gives people permission to defend themselves. And I think that the lack of understanding of what the law is on self-defense and what the dynamics are leads to hesitation. And when people have been trained in the use of the tools, have been trained in the decision making, understand everything that comes along with that, then they make better decisions. They're not making a decision based out of just abject fear. They're making decisions out of reasonable fear. And there's a very, very key distinction between just being afraid and being reasonably afraid for your life. And to recognize situations for what they are before you're put in that situation, and maybe you do a better job of avoiding them. I think one thing that the Second Amendment community is starting to come to terms with is that it is not going to survive on the backs of middle-aged white men. There are lots of other segments of our community at large in the United States that need to take note of both their personal liberties and their personal defense. And, there are segments of the community that have been persecuted. And, they have the same rights that any other person has and the same liberty to defend those rights. And this is where they come to do that. Here's the crazy thing. The Constitution provides for equal protection under the law. Okay, we've had a Supreme Court ruling here recently that you can't discriminate against marriage licenses from one state to the next. All right, so if you get married in South Carolina, you're married if you go to Nebraska. All right, your driver's license is good. You get a Georgia driver's license, you can drive in all 50 states in the Union. Okay. Why isn't your Georgia carrier license good in all 50 states in the Union? And so you look at some of the other parts of the other communities that can come to this to this big tent that we're talking about. And one, some of those other communities have been persecuted. The same legal battles they're fighting and winning, those same legal principles apply to the fight we're fighting. And it's the same way we're going to win. And we, as a firearms and self-defense community and training industry, need to be reaching out to those other communities. And if you're a freedom-loving American, well, then you got to reach out to people that don't look like you too. You got to reach out to them and bring them into this big tent so that it's here for our posterity. I mentioned several times previously making good decisions. I think Brian and Shelley's class, The Complete Combatant, does a really good job of teaching students how to avoid the deadly force decision. And, my talk today had to deal with reasonableness, and one of the bullet points in my presentation was avoidance. All right, if you can escape the situation, that is much better than opening up the entire realm of legal consequences that come along with being involved in a deadly force situation. Brian's material, I've been through the class as a student myself, excellent at learning how to avoid being put in that situation in the first place and how to deal with it in the aftermath. It's the shooting problem's the easy problem. That's the easiest thing to teach people to do. How do you teach people to not get in a fight? Okay, Brian does a really good job of that, and I strongly suggest people attend the Complete Combatant training. And then Shelley's just wonderful. You don't get a little bit of Shelley. If you get Shelley in your life, you get the whole Shelley. So, and that's a good thing.